Hello, you're listening to Me and Paranormal You with your host, Ryan Singer. Because it's more fun to believe. All right, I wasn't recording in time to catch that, but you almost on the record said, I'll do whatever you ask of me.
I'm a very malleable person, and I'm also a people pleaser where I get afraid sometimes if people. I used to get very afraid when people didn't like me, so I'd be like, "What do you need me to do? You want me to throw myself down the stairs?" They'd be like, "No," and I'd be like, "Well, I'll do it anyway," and then I would just do that and injure myself. I'd be like, "Do you like me now?" They're like, "No." Even less, actually, than I did before.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what you were trying to achieve there.
I totally understand that feeling, and I think as comedians, Alex Hooper is here, by the way.
Hi.
We focus on having a really fun show, and then afterwards, all you can think about is the one guy up front who wasn't laughing, right?
Yes, but I've gotten very good about ignoring and saying "fuck that guy" because
Yeah.
I've gotten very much attuned to like everyone else is having a good time. I can't control the one person who isn't, so let me focus on the 99 other people that are in tune with me right now.
Yeah.
You know, but at first, sure, of course you go to that guy and you're like, how do I get him to uncross his arms? How do I get him to stop looking at his phone? Anything. And then you realize it's not worth it.
Yeah, then you realize because that person was either dragged there or they've got so much going on in their own mind that they can't be present enough to enjoy a comedy show for 1 hour, that they're so addicted to their device or whatever it is, that it's just like, okay, who's the patron saint of lost souls? Like Saint Anthony or some shit like that, right?
That sounds right, sure.
And so it's like, go with Saint Anthony, friend.
Yeah.
You are a lost soul at this comedy show. I think. Well, we ran into each other at the Improv on this past Friday night, and goddamn, what a treat it was.
Agreed.
So when I first moved to LA, and because where are you out of originally?
I grew up in Baltimore, but I started comedy in LA just about 13 years ago.
Yeah, so I moved to LA about 11 years ago, this summer, I think. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We met pretty early on, I think, when I moved here, and then you were throwing these. I mean, it's called Crave.
Yeah.
It's like a comedy rave, essentially, in these warehouses. And, I mean, just like these wild, imaginative, magical shows that if you're driving down the street, you, like the normal person, would have no idea that there's this, like, magical, like, multiverse happening in this warehouse that they probably believe is abandoned or something, right down the street or right next to them as they drive by. And I was just like, oh my God, this is such a good vibe. What a fun time. And then, I mean, people probably most well know you from America's Got Talent. Would you agree with that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing. I mean, as many things as I've done, that is so far and beyond the hugest platform. I mean, it's like, I don't say this in a braggadocious way, but like my original audition from 2018 has over 100 million views online, like across different platforms and stuff like that. And I just can't replicate. I don't know how I'm going to replicate that in any way.
Yeah,
but either way, it was, I mean, it's a great thing to have.
Yeah, for sure. And it's always a beautiful moment when one of the magical weirdos breaks through.
Yeah, it's, that show, I never thought I'd be on that show for any reason. It's just, I don't watch it. It's not my thing. I know how cookie cutter and canned and produced it is. But when they gave me the opportunity to do it, they really listened to me. And I said, this is what I want to do. And this is how I want to do it. And they were like, great, you go be whatever Alex Hooper you want to be. And then I was like, I have to take this opportunity now. They're letting me play my own game and do whatever I want on a show where you are so tightened by these rules that they set for you. You know, if you're a comedian, they'll take your set and they'll pick it apart. They'll be like, not that, not that, not that, not that. Just keep this. You're like, that's the worst part of the joke. And they're like, that's what we like. And with me, they really just kind of let me fly.
That's great. And I think from an outsider's perspective, but also an insider from the other side of it, the idea that it's like they've got these rules that are in place, right? And that they understand, like, okay, we can let this, we like this. And then, but when it comes to someone like you, it's kind of like, well, we're not really accustomed to, like, caging this bird necessarily. So maybe they're just like, we just, let's let them just do it and let America decide.
Yeah, and I think also I was brought on there to be a heel, to be something completely against what everybody else on that show is trying to do. Clearly, like, I went in there, I wasn't going to win the show by making fun of the judges, but putting a little pageantry behind it and doing it in such an arrogant way was just kind of just was everyone, like, I mean, that's the worst bomb of my entire life by far. You would never know it by watching the clip because it seems so purposeful. But in the moment, I was like, whoa, this hurts. This is insane. And then 2.5 months later, when it actually aired, suddenly I was like, oh, this actually looks incredible. And then people on the internet, even though people of the show pretty much hate me because I go on there and I just loathe into and detest their idols. But people on the internet were like, this is exactly what we were looking for from that show. People that would never watch the show, it got to them. And then they're like, who is this person? And that just created a whole new avenue for me to go down as far as being a performer.
Yeah. And we had a conversation the other night where we were talking about being a prisoner of your own success in certain ways, right? And in scenarios where artists might find themselves imprisoned by too much success for something that they don't enjoy, right? And I think this is a really good example of, I think, like, let's say hypothetically you go on that show and, there's millions of people watching, it's huge exposure, and you, like, totally change your spirit and your just who you are, like, in a way that really resonates with, like, the judges and the core audience of that show. And now you're selling out places and rooms, and you're stuck doing that major change you had to do, right? Which is, and you went the opposite way with that. You're like, I'm not going to do that.
I kind of had to make a choice where it's like, okay, clearly people want me to roast, and that's what I've gotten on TV for, and that's what I'm known for. But that's like one little passion that I have in this grand scheme of things that is my comedic life. And I look at someone like Jeff Ross, who's a great friend of mine and has taught me so much. And he has, like, okay, I've picked my lane and that's what I want to do. I will do other things, but the roasting is what keeps bringing me back. For me, if that's what people want to hire me for, great. Like, I'm happy to do it, but I just can't. I would get bored if I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to lean into the roasting thing. And I have to constantly prove to people that I'm more than that because so many people only know me as that. People show up to my gigs on the road. They're like, oh, I thought you were just going to make fun of us the whole time. I was like, that's one way to do a show, sure, but what about the hour that I just did up there? Wasn't that better than me just, like, calling you, like, stupid homeless librarian or something like that?
Yeah, it's funny because for, just audience members, consumers of comedy, in the last, like, 7 years, roasting has been this, like, it's like this slow, I don't want to say it's like the nothing and the never-ending story, like taking over the universe. You know what I mean? But, like, so many people think it almost reminds me of of something like almost like lava, right? It just kind of slowly moved, and then it, like, had a spurt, right? And so many people think comedy is just roasting, who are consumers and only consume that, right?
Yeah.
So when you go up there and you're like, this is some jokes, this is some performance, because you're not a standard stand-up comic when it comes to just going up there and just, hey, A plus B equals C, ba-da, laugh.
No.
A plus B, you know what I mean? So and then for me, that's like it's a magical moment when a performer, an individual, realizes that there are no rules to the art form of stand-up comedy. And it speaks to me in a way, I mean, obviously I'm a little bit biased here, but towards this kind of thing. But it speaks to me as a person who has also broken through or broken free from other things. And the way they perform in stand-up comedy, their chosen art form, is a reflection of the life on a larger scale that they are living. And I think that's incredibly fair to say regarding your life of, you know, and I'm not trying to talk negatively about this, but you are not a cubicle guy.
No, clearly. I love that. I don't want to speak. Honestly, if you had said that to me, I would have been like, that's the most insulting roast I've ever heard in my life. I've been burned harder in this moment than I have on thousands of other jokes that I've heard about myself. No, like to address there's a couple points I want to address. One, you're right. I can't be a rule follower. I never have been. I'm a high school dropout. I got expelled from college. Like I can't, if you tell me there's a way to do something, my brain shuts down. I can't, like IKEA furniture is the perfect example of something that will frustrate me to the end all, because there is a very specific way that you need to put together this couch. And if you miss one piece, it's all going to fall apart. But to me, my brain wants to go, well, what if I started from the back end and then I rebuilt it in my own way? And obviously that doesn't work. So stand-up comedy is the only thing, maybe not the only thing, but it just fits so perfectly to what I want because there are no rules. Whatever I want to do, I can do. And there will be people that say, I don't know if you should do that. But then it's up to me to figure out, well, can I make it funny? Can I make this a plausible thing to move my career forward, or even just to make people laugh in that moment? And I love that there's no rules. And that's kind of where roasting comes in is I'm such a loving person, and I want people to feel better about themselves, and I want to inspire people and discover who you are at your core. But me roasting is just me putting on a silly character and going like, isn't this just fun? Aren't we just having a good time? And it just so happens that's why I roast in these crazy outlandish costumes, because it just turns it into, okay, but that's not, he's doing something else, right? It's not just some white guy, another white guy just showing his privilege and being a dick. He's being just a weird psychedelic animal up there. And I think people respond to that just because they're like, that's not what I want to do, but kudos to him for understanding that about himself.
They're in on it, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, because clearly this person isn't trying to be serious.
I would hope nobody thinks that. Like it's really crazy to me when people are like, that guy's such a dick. And I'm like, like somebody once called me a professional asshole. And I think that's a great term for myself, because I'm not actually an asshole by any means. The last thing I want is for anyone to feel sequestered or not included or anything like that. I want everybody to feel great all the time. But sometimes that comes out. I get these opportunities to do it in a way where people want to be roasted. Like, that's my number one request on Cameo. I do a lot of stuff on Cameo, and people want to get roasted just because there's something cathartic about being able to take these hits against yourself that makes you rise up and escape from other judgments from other people.
And I think it speaks to the heart of one of my core beliefs when it comes to comedy, life, especially the paranormal and the supernatural and the mystical, is if we lose our sense of humor about ourselves, there is zero chance we can ever communicate any kind of belief or idea to someone without sounding like an asshole.
Sure.
And if we keep our sense of humor, and sometimes it's easier than others to keep our sense of humor about ourselves, but like I think roasting in that way, getting roasted, is a perfect example of that. And we've all seen the people not take the roasting as well as other people, and it's not as endearing as when someone really takes it well. And I'm not going to sit here and say that some roasts haven't gone too far, maybe potentially, but
I've gone too far.
That's not like a thing that's not even a conversation I'm like interested in having necessarily. But when someone can take it, right? It's very endearing to everyone else watching that person. And I've been roasted maybe like when I moved away from Dayton, Cincinnati years ago. It was like an unexpected roast that kind of happened, and it was funny, and I enjoyed it, but it like speaks to like this whole idea of like what you've made and what you've created, right? Because thoughts are tangible things, I think, and they're actually like physical objects, and everything we consume is, parlaying into some other thing inside a conglomerate, right?
Yes.
So when it comes to the journey that you've been on, being a high school dropout, getting kicked out of college, it was something inside of you that doesn't want to follow rules, right? We've kind of talked about that. But there seems to be a hunger for something, right? Like or you're hungry for an experience, for something higher than what's being presented to you on a plate. Like, this is your life, gobble it up. You're like, I sense that you're like, there's a lot more plates that people don't see.
Well, so I spent years very much inside of myself because I grew up and I still have just about as bad a case of eczema as one can possibly have. Like, a doctor told me, he's like, there's probably 1,000 people in the world that have it like you do. And that's just what I have to deal with. But as a kid, I was in so much pain. I was constantly being treated for different things, going to the hospital, like all of this, like embarrassed by the way I looked, like literally like pussing, oozing out of my face, like just so like I was on fire. Like, imagine just walking around for 20 years on fire and nobody else can see. I mean, they can see that you're kind of on fire, but they can't put you out. So they just have to deal with a person who is in flames in their presence. And for me, not knowing what to do, I cursed the universe and everyone around me. And my whole game was make them as miserable as I am. Because if I got to feel like this, then everybody else should feel like this too. And then something just flipped. When I was like 21, 22, a couple of things started to happen to me. And I kind of realized, like, maybe there's a way where I can not focus everything on this. What if there was more to the universe than it was trying to destroy me? What if it was just teaching me lessons that could open me up? And that's when my seeking started to happen. And I kind of like, I don't want to say like spirituality entered my life, but I did start going like, okay, maybe we're not put here for zero reason. Maybe we're not here to cause trouble. Maybe I can do better for myself. And that's when, like, obviously, like, you find someone who cares about you, you take some deep psychedelic trips solo on your own, and you face yourself in the wild. And I think I could go on about that for hours on end, about how, like, I used to take psychedelics only in, like, party settings. Like, like, I'm going to a concert, I'll eat Nathan mushrooms. First time you do it by yourself and you are faced with everything that you have been and are, and there's no escaping it. One of the most cathartic experiences.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, I'm happy to. What do you want to know?
What inspires you to even make the choice to do that is my first point of curiosity.
It's a fear of self. I think I spent many years not wanting to discover who I was because I felt so held back by the eczema and just having a skin condition that I felt like, well, nobody's ever going to want to love me. I'm just this gross, flaky monster running around the universe. And I kind of had to, it's that story that we tell ourselves. And that's what it is like, that's what I am. Okay, but I have a good heart. I do know that somewhere at my core, I know I have a good heart and I care about people. I just don't know how to rise above this other thing. And when I started taking psychedelics by myself, I took an eighth of mushrooms for the first time when I was 16 years old at a party where everyone else was drinking. And so I'm staring at a light thinking, oh my God, I understand the importance of trees. Yeah. And everyone else is like, just like, wasn't math class crazy? And I'm like, math class, you fucking idiots. And we're so much bigger than math class. So I've always like been attuned to drugs to make me like feel better. better. But when I realized, like, psychedelics, yes, they are super fun, they're amazing, but they are medicinal if you use them that way. And so when at least once a year, I take a day for myself and I just do a heroic dose of whatever it may be, whether it's mushrooms, acid, ketamine, DMT, whatever it may be. I just do that and I just go, and I don't set an intention. I'm one of those people I just go, brain, what am I supposed to see? You show me. And I just sit there for 6 hours. No, I put some music on, put some fun lights in the room so it's like a warm ambient setting and I feel good. But then I just literally, like, no stimulation whatsoever. No books, no movies, no any, sit there and see what the fuck happens to you. And man, I just like, I have forgiven myself for the piece of shit I used to be so many times over. There was one year where I did it and I literally started making voicemails to all of my family members apologizing. Thank God I knew not to send them in the moment, because the next day I listened back, I was like, whoa. These can't be released. This is just like minutes of me crying, going, I'm so sorry. I wasn't better to you. But you're bound to learn things about yourself and face yourself, because there is no escaping. You can't just turn off that drug and so you let it hit you. And then that's when I really started, like, finding myself and going, like, wow, I have all this energy. What if I use it for good instead of evil? What if I make people feel better instead of worse? And then that's that. Now when people meet me and they're like, oh, you're so happy, you're so positive, you're so optimistic. It's like, yeah, this took years of fucking work to get here. Years.
It was a choice.
It was a very obvious, not obvious, but just direct choice. I just said, okay, I've lived on the other side. I've been depressed and angry and sad as I can possibly be. What's on the other side, right? And I honestly feel like I don't get depressed that often anymore. I had a few times during the pandemic where it, like, caught up with me. I think we all had those moments when you're just like, fuck, what is anything? Why are we here? But I feel like I used up that of depression. Like, if it was like you could see like a liter like thing or something, like in a barrel, it went down to zero by the time I was 19, because I literally used up every single drop of depression that I was allotted in my life. And then I was like, well, what haven't I used? Never really been happy, never really showed love or tried to help people. Maybe that's the direction. And suddenly, when you make that shift, everything opens up to you. And those little, like, I know I can talk to you about this, but like those little things where, like, the universe just seems to go, oh, look, he's playing for us now. Let's reward him. Let's see what happens, because he's not just thinking about himself. He's thinking about the greater cause, the connectivity. And I do believe that we are all one source working together to create a better organism, to whatever this thing is that we are all a part of. I do believe that, like, I'm you, you're me, we're all the same thing, just acting out in different ways, trying to figure it all out. And when I started thinking like that, suddenly I was like, everything's different. Everything's different. And I just think I got more in tune with myself, with the people around me, with myself as a comedian, as an artist. You have to allow yourself to become whatever you're supposed to be. And I'm a very stubborn asshole, and I hold myself back constantly, because I tell myself these stories of, no, you don't get to do that because you're this. You're not good with this. That's not your thing. Well, what if I stop telling myself these things and I just allow myself to grow in whatever direction I'm supposed to, and suddenly, a couple years later, I'm wearing a unitard and a tail and gallivanting around television sets like a fucking dork, because that's what apparently I'm supposed to be.
And the universe sits back and claps.
Yeah, or screams at me to get off the stage in the moment. But whatever it was, it works for me.
Let's take a quick break here. And we're back. Okay, let me make a timestamp of that. Um, it is interesting because, when we decide that we're going to make a change, we make a choice. Because I remember for me, it was early on in comedy. I was probably in my I was in my late 20s. And, because I had bought into that story of like, you can't be funny unless you're sad. You can't be funny unless you're depressed, or if life is good, no one wants to hear that shit on stage, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember being like, well, and part of me, it might have just been like, well, nobody's doing that. Maybe I could do that, and that would separate me from people. I mean, I'm not gonna act like maybe that wasn't part of it too, but then it turns out it's like, oh, it's so much more fun getting off stage after you've tried to, for me, be funny by telling people about a bunch of things you love, and also mix in everything else. It's not like nonstop love fest, but I felt better. I'd get off stage and I'd feel better than when I was up there being like, let me tell you why love is bullshit.
Sure. Yeah. I was that person too. I was very much I mean, people would tell me about their heroes and I'd be like, yeah, but that doesn't mean anything. Like, that was just another person that with a worthless life, just like yours is. Like, that kind of mentality where I was like, why? At one point I was like, why would I say that to somebody that services no one? And instead, when you figure out, okay, I want to be this loving individual that spreads positivity and all this, like, suddenly your joke writing becomes so much more specific. It's not just about what happened to me in the day or what's something weird incident that I came across. It is, I have this time on stage where people have paid money, hopefully, luckily, to hear what I have to say. Well, what message do I want to present with that time? Do I want to show them like, yeah, I'm an angry guy and this is what upsets me and it's funny, but like, I'm just mad that there's a Starbucks across from a Starbucks, blah, blah, blah. Sorry, Lewis Black. It's a good bit.
It is a good bit, but yes.
But like, or do I want to talk about how I'm discovering who I am at my core and how that's changing me, and how if you allow yourself to fly free and not be afraid of what's on the other side, who knows what's going to happen inside of you. And suddenly when I was writing more toward things like that, I was so excited to get on stage. I'm not just talking about some innocuous reference or some just like random ass joke about a phrase in the society. That's all fine. I love that stuff too. But like, at some point, and I think every comedian learns this on their own, who are you at your core and how do you show that to people becomes very important. You want to be yourself up there, even if it is a hyperbolized version of yourself.
So do you think Psychedelics was one of the heavy hands in this transformation?
Yeah, for sure. So my first album is called Hugs, Drugs, Pugs. And when I said I was going to name an album that, everyone's like, come on, man, you can't name an album that. And I'm like, why? And those are the three first things that opened my heart, expanded my mind. I became more open to people and being friends and not trying to just write off everybody as like, they're a loser, whatever. So I started opening my arms up, hug people. Drugs, obviously, because I was allowing my brain to just expand in different ways and show me things that I still question to this day. I mean, I know you've done DMT. I remember before I had ever done DMT, I listened to the episode of you and Shane Moss on this podcast, which is an insane episode to go back on. But when you've done that drug, ayahuasca, DMT, you see things that you only lead to more questions. There's no answers in there. There's only more questions. And then that makes you kind of go even further of like, well, what do we know? What is this existence that we're living in now? How much of reality is this? Like, you can play that game. Are we in a simulation? Is this all in my own mind? Are we a marble in a sack that an alien's rolling around another planet? All that stuff. And then pugs, I was never an animal person. My fiance, wife now, really wanted a dog, and I didn't. And she goes, yeah, well, you're not the one who's home alone every night. There's no response to that.
No, there's not.
There's none. So I had to get a dog. She said, what would you want? Pugs were always funny to me. So I got a pug. And sure enough, my entire life just changed because of the love of this animal. I understood animals where I never had before. There'd always been this definitive wall between us where I felt like animals sense my fear and my discomfort, and that makes them uncomfortable, and I'm an enemy to them. And now all of a sudden that completely shifted. And then another barrier was broken through. And that's kind of what I feel a lot of my life is. It's like I have so many walls in place from when I was a child that I built myself, or my brain, because of my situation, was just like, that's a wall, that's a wall, that's a wall. And now I am like, I want to be uncaged. I want to be untethered. I want to be just flying, man, all the time, where it's, you don't know what direction I'm going in, because I can go any direction I want at any time. But no matter what, it's going to be a positive. It's going to be the right direction, because I'm leading with positivity, love. I know I keep saying those words, but they're big in my, they're so big for me, just because it was such a shift in my mentality. And I do believe anyone can do this. I really do. There are people I know that have depression that is so far controlling, anxiety that really, like, it puts them in this tiny little box and makes them feel like they are completely locked down. But I do feel like with the right amount of work and the right thing for you, it's about finding, I'm not saying hugs, drugs, and pugs will work for every single person. That was just my method that I needed. I needed to go to music festivals and see people that were just completely carefree, living their life, being friendly with everybody, putting on costumes, to realize that I could do that too. I don't have to just wear clothes from Target or something like that if I don't want to. And when you start to kind of let yourself become whatever it is that it's supposed to be, and you don't know where it's going. I always say, I don't know where I'm going, but I like the direction that I'm headed. So what else is out there for me to explore?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a beautiful way to go about things, and make no mistake, there is a war against this mentality and love. I mean, war is a little strong. I don't want to be like, there's a conspiracy of the world to take down all loving people, but when you, because I mean, you even touched on it. You said, I don't mean to keep saying, loving and spirituality and stuff, but because we see these small shots that get fired constantly, because people will say like, oh, I'm so tired of like hearing like this, oh, loves, I think for me the biggest one is, and not to say that there's not some truth to it, is when people get upset about like, sending love and thoughts and prayers, right? That gets shit on all the time. And it's like, well, yeah, we can also give aid on top of giving thoughts and prayers. And, because I'm of the mentality that I do think thoughts, and whether we want to call them prayers, can be potentially powerful, because it's, the mind creates the world, and what you send out with your mind now is altering the world, right? So there is a real pushback against people who are trying to break down the standard mold of, this is what life is. Life is bullshit. And it feels like you kind of like pushed back against yourself when you were younger, for obvious reasons.
Yeah,
I mean,
100%.
It's very understandable from where you're coming from, your launch point, right? So it's interesting to me that it's not that everybody doesn't, because I do want to be clear for people listening. I don't, when we say this is a choice, I'm not trying to tell people that they're making the wrong choice when they don't choose it.
No,
right?
definitely not.
So that's not what we're here to do. And it's not saying that they're too lazy to do the work. It's not saying that they've made a conscious effort to not choose to try to be more loving and all that kind of stuff. I think the pandemic did really, for so many of us, it made us confront so many different things too that were not serving us in the right way, and allowed us to, okay, well, what changes can I make accordingly?
Yeah, I think it brought out whatever was in us either way. We saw the best and the worst come out. What I learned is, like, if you were an asshole before the pandemic, you probably were still going to be an asshole afterwards, because like that's when you start seeing like, you know, people's real truth came out because we were scared. And when you're scared, or when you're uncomfortable, or when you really don't know what to do, you have no choice other than to be whatever you are in that moment. And if you're a person who has grown up with anger and fear and sadness and you haven't confronted all that yet, well, if you don't do it in that time, it's going to come out in this way. In the same, but on the other side of the coin, it also was people realized that, oh, maybe I'm meant to be better than I am. Maybe I do have time to work on it now. And I'm not saying, I'm not one of those people going, hey, you better fucking learn a new skill during the pandemic, because I understand there were mothers, single mothers of 3 that had to work 2 jobs and didn't know what to fucking do with their kids. There are so many extenuating circumstances beyond that. But I think part of it is facing yourself. And that is the part that I think is the scariest. 100% that's the scariest part, is going, everything I know about me is a story that I've told myself. And what if it wasn't true? What if I was telling myself things that I've only gotten from, you know, from other sources, or just that have led me to believe this? What if I could go another direction? And I think that's the shift that I had to make within myself. And I'm not yet, like you said, I'm not saying just do it, it's so easy. Like, it's not, because you have to completely shake up things in your life. You might have to get rid of people that aren't servicing you, that are toxic to you. Things, you know, it's change fucking sucks, dude. I hate it. I hate it in every sense of the word. Anytime I have to learn something new, I tell myself this is good for you, but I still am like, oh, but it's going to like take brain power to learn how to use this air fryer that I just got as a wedding gift. Like, yeah. I'm used to cooking in a crock pot. Now I have to learn this thing. I don't want to do it. That's where my brain, every little thing that I don't know how to do, my brain goes, fuck that. I don't want to do it. And then I have to stop and go, okay, how hard is it really going to be though? Can you just get over it for 5 seconds? And I know that's kind of like pivoted directions a little bit, but I mean,
well, no, I like that, because it's like my default mode is don't tell me what to fucking do. And like that is my, and it's, you know, living here in a relationship with someone who is a Virgo, who's very, you know, organized, locked in, clean. And I'm over here floating around like, hey, I'm a crab, man. It's like, it is, you know, it is a lot of me like trying to stop myself from saying, don't tell me what to fucking do.
Yeah.
And it's like, and then almost immediately after realizing, oh, this is better doing it this way. And yeah. It's so fucking frustrating that that's my default, right? But I mean, I think being such a free spirit enables one to, I guess, have an easier time making these choices to try to explore or try to paradigm shift the way we live our lives, things like that. And like breaking free from the quote unquote system earlier on kind of lends itself to having that space, right? That room to move around and be like, okay, well, what else is out there? And different experiences for different people kind of crack that open and make that possible. I mean, for me, it was like some paranormal shit that happened in my life years ago where I was like, well, what else is true that I thought was all BS, right? And so I'm interested because you talk about this, and to me, it's really interesting. Because there's a scientific, there's a study, or there's, a parapsychologist who is into the paranormal experiments and things like that under controlled lab settings was once talking about why do more psychologists not get into parapsychology, or more scientific minds, why don't they get into it? And the response, I think it was Dr. Dean Radin who said this. His response was because there's too much uncertainty. And the scientific-minded person, they want certainty. And in parapsychology, there's so much uncertainty about the future, about the results, essentially the future being unknown, right? And as comedians, I think we understand better than most people about the future being uncertain. So when the pandemic happened, I think we were more well equipped,
Certainly.
emotionally and mentally than most people. Not this is in no way bragging. It's just because we've always been like, how am I going to eat next month,
Yeah.
right? So it was we were prepared because we'd been kind of doing the time already. When it comes to the uncertainty of the future and being comfortable with that, it's interesting to me because the future isn't promised. Tomorrow isn't promised to any of us. And I've always thought if we spend too much time worrying about the future, I'm going to be worrying about a bunch of stuff that I might not even get a chance to be doing, right? So when it comes to the uncertainty of this future, is simply knowing the direction, like you said, is that what you lean on for, I guess, because we all need to feel balance and stability on some level.
We all need somebody to lean on.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think I don't like there are people you go, what's your 5-year plan? And they immediately have an answer to that. They know where they're going to be 10 years, 15 years. I have broad goals of things I want to do, but if I chisel it down and say this is the way it will happen, I know that I will eventually self-destruct, because if I tell myself that's the way to do it, my brain's going to go, but you don't do things the way they're supposed to be done. Let's fuck this up. Let's find a way to shake it until it breaks. And then I have to lean on just, do I feel good about what I'm doing? Do I like the work that I'm putting out? Am I excited to just keep releasing things, shipping products, as Troy Conrad once told me to call it. He was like, an artist's job is to ship products. It's not to create, because if you can create all you want, if you never ship the product, then you didn't actually do anything. So am I excited about what I'm shipping? Am I excited about things, that possibilities for the future based on what I've already built? And this was a very early thing for me in the pandemic. When you said the uncertainty thing, I remember saying that. I went, man, nothing is certain. And my wife looked at me, she goes, but it never was. And I was like, oh, hard stop. Hang on. Okay.
Yeah.
She's like, you thought it was because everything was the same and you could trust these different things, but really it wasn't. And nothing has to be certain at any time. So why not just live in whatever way you want to live, as long as you're being a good person to others and yourself? There's really no wrong way to do it. And I have, like I said, I have goals. I want to sell a TV show, the cartoon that I'm working on. I want to sell out theater. I want to break through comedy clubs and sell out theaters. I want all of this stuff, but I'm not saying this is the path. I'm just saying keep doing things that feel good to you. Keep allowing yourself to be open to opportunities, and just being a good soul, I think, will carry you further than any of that. Hard work, kindness, and talent will take you there no matter what. Like if you have those three things, you will be successful in some form or another. But that's the thing, is I think a lot of people, they get hung up on, well, I didn't want to be this form of successful. I wanted this. I didn't, like in our field, a lot of times you hear like, oh, I didn't want to be in a writer's room. Like I wanted to be touring clubs. It's like, okay, but your opportunities led you to here. How do you embrace this opportunity that you have now to get to these other ones? And for me, whatever comes through, I'm like, okay, if I don't get something, it wasn't right for me. I'll be hurt for it for a little bit. And then I'll go, but clearly it wasn't meant for me. So what, because I didn't get this thing, what else is open to me now? And I really try to keep that mentality as I move through this. Cause I mean, like, I'm a vagabond. I understand that. I am a person, I can't do the same thing for too long, or I simply get bored of it. And I'm an explorer like you, whether it be in my own mind or out in the world. I want to know, I want to experience things all the time. And if I'm experiencing new things, that means I'm constantly learning and I'm constantly growing and I'm allowing change to wash over me. And at that point, there is no wrong direction. The only time I feel like I'm in a wrong direction is like you'll see somebody do something on social media that like blows them up, right? Like maybe they did it through podcasting or they did it through TikTok or whatever. So you go, oh, I should do that thing because I'm kind of like that person and they made it work. But if you find yourself not enjoying the thing, what's the point? Right? Like you were talking about earlier, like what if I had gotten pigeonholed into this, like, or you gotten pigeonholed into, I'm a clean comedian that opens for other comedians and I'm going to be pretty standard so that I can go to A to B and audiences everywhere will get me. Sure, that could have worked for you. And you could be touring, selling out theaters right now as that Ryan Singer, but that's not, I want to explore paranormal. I want to talk about aliens. I want to talk about conspiracies. I want to do all these other things. But this audience that I've built up might not be on my side here because that's not who they signed up for. And there's a weird thing where if you tell yourself like, I'm going to do whatever I want, people can follow me or not, then on this journey, then all of a sudden that freedom opens up and you can do whatever the fuck you want. I know I've been doing comedy 13 years, like I said. I've done so many amazing things in that time that I never thought I would do. I've had so many cool experiences, met the best people I've ever thought I could ever know doing that. And that's a quarter of my career, maybe closer to a third. But that means I got 2/3 or 3/4 left. And if everything expands on itself and grows on what you've built before, it's going to get better and better and better. And if I keep that thought, then I'm like, what? How could I ever stop? How could I ever not wake up every day and not work towards this?
That's a great perspective.
It took me a while. It took me years. You know, those years 5, like 4 through 8 were me going, why hasn't it happened for me yet? Why is it happening to everybody else? Why are they getting all the things I want? Why? And I was like, and then literally I stopped myself one day and go, why hasn't it happened for me yet? And a voice in my head went, why hasn't what happened? And I didn't have an answer. And if I didn't have an answer to my own question, it kind of makes it a moot point.
Yeah, that's so funny. Like when I was very young, a comic told me once, they said, never ask an audience member a question you don't already know the answer to.
Huh.
And because then you'll have a response. Then you have your response ready to go. But that is interesting. Like, why are we screaming these questions to the universe and we don't know the answer ourselves? Like, that's really funny. Because I was, when I was younger, we all start with a delusion, right? To even think we should be doing this in some way. Like, I was like, I'll do a couple open mics. I'll probably be on the Tonight Show. You know what I mean? Like, that's how quick it's going to happen for me. And I'll be Michael Keaton. I'll be the next Michael Keaton by the time I'm 45.
Multiplicity 2, here it comes.
Right? So I was just watching the Michael Keaton episode of Norm Macdonald's talk show on Netflix last night. Norm, wow. And Michael Keaton, it's just...
Those are two great minds to have together.
Yeah, it was really enjoyable. But I think, too, like, it's funny because you say, like, why isn't it happen for me? And I was, well, what? And I didn't have an answer for it. And then you lay in also the earlier point of when you go looking for something, you only get more questions. So for me, that's the beauty of the journey. And the final answer is what puts a stop to joy, the joy of searching, the joy of trying to find, the joy of wondering, the joy of curiosity, right? Once we have like an ultimate final answer for everything, it's over. I think existence stops. I mean, this is just me thinking off the top of my head right now, but that is the end of the world as we know it. When collectively everyone understands this is the, because basically what I'm trying to say is I agree. I don't think it exists. I don't think it's there. And it takes many different forms, our curiosity and our questions looking for these things. Like for me, I'm like, well, why the fuck would these aliens only be talking to our asshole government?
Right. Or the word,
right?
Why are they only probing the absolute, like, the people that you're never going to believe, right? Why is it only the farmer in Kentucky who hasn't had a human interaction in 20 years? Why is it that guy that they gravitate towards?
I have a hard time justifying that because I believe that if you can travel through space-time, which they can because they're here, that I lean into the idea that they're more evolved, spiritual, in every way, right? And it's not just they had a technological breakthrough, but then I think about all the technology we've developed recently in the last 15 years and how unevolved we still are. And then I start to wonder, like, oh, did I overestimate the kindred spiritness of these extraterrestrials? And then I'm like, if they are more advanced in every way, like I believe them to be, why are they dealing with the bullies? Right? And I can't
Like
justify
us being the
it.
bullies, you mean?
No, like the people in charge who are suppressing information, potentially, and not giving us disclosure, not letting us all know on the planet that aliens are real and they've been here for years, and that we're even working with them, and we've reverse engineered things like that, right? So it's like, why? And there's no answers, at least at this time. But sometimes I wonder if I get the answer, am I going to be fucking shattered? Right? And so that's I think the fine line we walk, the tightrope. Because if I was younger and I'm yelling, why don't I have it? Why don't I have it? And then if I would have stopped myself and been like, well, what is it? I would have been like, fame and money, motherfucker.
I need all the cocaine, and I want to do it off a tit in the morning for breakfast with my coffee.
Yeah, right. So like, I probably would have been shattered. Like, understanding myself answering, like looking at myself and saying, fame and money, motherfucker, what else do you think you want? And I would have been like, oh God, I thought I was an artist, man. You know, like it would have shattered me probably.
Yeah. Did you watch Don't Look Up by any chance?
Yes.
Okay. I was like, I the whole thing about that, when they said, well, when Meryl Streep as the president was like, well, let's not tell anyone, I was kind of on her side. I was like, yeah, don't tell people the world's ending. Just let them go about their existence and just let the world end. Because if you tell them, it's going to be mass chaos. Everyone's going to freak out. They're going to start murdering each other. They're going to start fighting for resources. It is going to be an absolute breakdown of everything we know as a society. Whereas if you don't know the world is coming, and then 5 minutes before it ends, you just see this flaming fucking ball shooting towards you, and you're like, you don't have any time to reconcile with loved ones or people that you've had that you need to forgive or anything. You don't have any of that time. You don't have time to freak out. There's just this beautiful bliss of, oh, this is how it goes. I don't have time for this. Maybe like, I'd like to think that I could find peace in the last couple of minutes of my life and of it ending. I'd like to think I could. But I really like when they were all like, why aren't you going to tell everybody? I was kind of like, maybe they shouldn't tell everybody.
Well, let me offer you this counter opinion, for the sake of showing both sides of this.
Yeah.
I hear you, right? I hear what you're saying. Ignorance is bliss, right? So, but on the other hand, having this kind of information and feeling like you're allowed to have it and it affects every other single person on the planet, but you feel like you're allowed to have it and everyone else isn't deserving of this information, that bothers me.
Okay.
That bothers me because I do believe that, yeah, there's going to be a little bit of chaos and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I don't think that's how it plays out. I think we've seen this scenario play out so many times in movies and TV and stuff, and we're told that everyone's going to freak out and it's going to break down, and we see breakdowns in society all the time with in another situation. So obviously there's going to be a little bit of that. But I think about something I just learned not too long ago when I was watching the first part one of the documentary Century of the Self, and it's this BBC Adam Curtis documentarian guy who makes great documentaries. And they were talking about how England, when Hitler was organizing all of his forces and they knew war was probably coming,
I'm sorry, hard stop. Who's Hitler?
He was this guy who had an idea. Anyway, so they built all of these like hospitals, if I'm not mistaken, like because they knew like we're gonna have a lot of people in the hospital, and but like there was no war coming as far as the people knew, right? So they built all these like places to like shelter people and hide people or take care of them. Then the war happens, and they're bombing the cities, and it talks to the fear of fear. There's nothing to fear but fear itself. And it wasn't until recently I really realized that quote is really fucking awesome. And because what they found was the people in England who were under constant bombardment, because the people in like the room thinking like, we got to take care of our citizens, were like, they're going to be freaking out. Everybody's going to be fucking going crazy. We need to have places. But what they didn't realize is once the people realized that the bombings were happening and that they were happening and they weren't going to stop, people just like started living their life. They weren't hiding in their houses all day. They were just like doing their thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm really boiling this down in a base way that's, that it could have some inaccuracies, but to me it speaks to the resiliency and the ultimate understanding of the human creature, that when faced with what seemingly is the end or insurmountable odds, we will rise up. And maybe I'm overestimating, and that's very possible. So what I think would happen is you would have a moment, a spike upon initial realization of the end of the world coming.
Like we did with the pandemic, like the beginning of COVID.
Yeah.
Rush the grocery stores, buy everything you can.
Yeah.
And
then you'd have a moment where everybody's like, okay, well, not everybody. I mean, a lot of people were still out there working and all kinds of stuff. But if I do think that those final days before the end of the world, the earth would probably be the most peaceful, unpolluted, chill place it's ever been since the dinosaurs. That's what I think, and that could last 4 months.
I mean, best case scenario, if it would be that for sure.
Now, granted, I'm an optimist, so
right, me too. I look at The Walking Dead, and I'm just like, yeah, this guy's, come on, we can do better than this. You know, we can work with these zombies. We don't have to be killing them. Like, no, so like, yeah, I would love if that was the answer, because I am one of those people who, because I spent so many years getting so overheated and so frustrated and angry within myself, and I could feel that fire burning inside of me. At this point, when I'm a person when, like, if I get lost on a road trip, right? I miss an exit, I go the wrong direction, I'm about to run out of gas. I'm one of those people that's like, hey man, we're going to get through this. It's fine. And the person right next to me be like, we're almost out of gas though. We are so far away from a gas station. I'm like, but that's not going to help. What? How do we get to here? And just trust that it's all going to work, Like, this is, it's just, that's what has worked for me in the past few years, is stop freaking out about everything, because no matter what, that was my go-to mode, was just, this is going to hurt me, this is going to affect me negatively, so freak out about it now. But that doesn't actually solve any problems. My friend Bronson Jones, who's a great comic here in LA, I'm sure you know him, right? He taught me, we were in this situation once on the road in 2019. The fires were going crazy. We were trying to get from Northern California, like way up at the top, like Humboldt County, back to Santa Cruz to do a gig. And they closed the 5. They closed every major highway because of the fires were burning so bad. And then we realized we were going to run out of gas, but there's no gas stations open because of the fires, and we can't get to anywhere. And they've done blackouts in all the towns to try to make it so the power lines won't cause more fires. Anyway, how this manifests is there is one gas station within 300 miles that's open, that's on an Indian reservation. And we're sitting in a line that is 3+ hours to get gas. And we're sitting there, we know we're going to miss our show. We don't know if we're going to make it to this gas station, even though we're already in line for it. And Bronston looked at me and I was like, dude, this sucks. And he goes, no, Alex, If there's no solution, then there's no problem. And right now, there's no solution. So just relax. And I was like, fuck. That's a beautiful way of looking at it. We are in a situation that literally we cannot change and have no effect on. There's nothing we can do other than be here. Why would we feel anything other than calm?
That is really beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow, we are so beholden to make a gig. Like, it is, like, we were talking about this earlier when you showed up like on time. And I was told very early on and often by my mother, if you're not 5 minutes early, you're late. And so I hate being late. And like, I often, ever since I moved to LA, it's a shock if I'm not the first comedian who shows up to the show.
Me too.
And because of that, I'm like, I'm not going to be late. I'm not missing a gig. I'm not going to be late. And so, like, but to understand, like, I mean, so we feel a lot of pressure to show up to a gig. I mean, that's probably the most pressure I ever feel in my life, is to make it to the gig on time, even more than the gig itself. Right. But that idea of, if there's no solution, there can't be a problem, is beautiful. And it immediately makes me think about climate change, which I don't want to think of it in that way. But it's, I guess, at what point does a problem transition and become something else as just a reality?
Right, like a way of life. Because you keep hearing these numbers by 2030. If we don't fix it by 2030, then if we don't revert back, then we've gone over the ledge. Right? That's what scientists keep saying, and every few days another article comes out that's saying we need to stop this, and this, but it's too late. We already didn't do it. So we basically have 8 years left to fix everything, or it's all a dumpster fire. Well, nothing's really. Tiny little things are happening, sure, because there are people out there that are trying to adjust and make those happen. But for the most part, people don't give a shit. How could you give a shit about such a macro problem when you are worrying about, but my kid needs this notebook to go to school? I can't worry about the gas crisis. I can't worry about the ocean rising. I need to figure out how I'm going to feed myself and my family and keep when I just lost my job. That's most people's reality. So how do you think about a problem so beyond your control? Sure, recycle, do whatever you need to do to tell yourself that story. But even I'm in that same boat. I'm just like, I can't do anything about it. I'm a meat eater, and I have friends that are vegans that are like, you got to stop eating meat. And I'm just like, it's all this, it's this, it's this. I could, but that's not really going to solve the problem. And so that's a tough one. That really is.
Yeah. And I mean, the people who are the problem, the corporations, the huge business that are the problem, they've done a really good job of making us feel like we're the problem.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you're demanding these things, so we're giving them to you. It's like, guess what, motherfucker? You can't smoke in bars anymore. There's no riots. You know what I mean? Like, removing something completely taking it off the table, people adjust. It's like we were saying, I think people adjust quite quickly. Some form of us, in some kind of way, survived an ice age, right? To be here as human beings now. Some organism, some ancient organism that was a predecessor to us, survived all kinds of shit. We will adapt. We will survive. But when we get too smart and start making it impossible for ourselves to do that, some form of us will live on, right? And I mean, who knows what it's going to look like, or be, unless we, and we are going to, I still hold out hope that we're going to, make these changes, and we'll see what happens. But it's, this got dark at the end.
It did get really dark. I didn't mean for it to. Like this again, being a shining light, sometimes what happens is you have to allow your brightness to dim. Otherwise, you're just like you're gonna burn yourself out. And so that's my whole thing in comedy. I didn't expect this to go here, but like my whole thing is blending dark with silly. I talk about really dark shit. I will talk about mothers losing their children. I will talk about building fires, about horrible things. But how do I make it silly so we come back to this place of love and fun and optimism?
Well, that's the whole balancing act of like whether people want to call it the new age or the spiritual world and things like that. It's integrating the shadow self. And a lot of people don't. They think you have to try to banish your shadow self to like the outskirts of the universe, when in fact you're just trying to integrate,
Yeah.
you know, and the masculine and the feminine. You're trying to integrate these together, the paranormal and the normal, the supernatural and the natural. And it's like, okay, well, let's mix them together. Let's find the best parts of both, and do that. But we didn't talk about the music project at all yet. So
I
let's
can go into that a little bit.
So let's talk about that now as we put a bow on this bad boy.
Yeah, let's do it. So I like I said, I get bored of things, and when I come up with an idea, sometimes I shoo them away, and other times they stick in my mind. And I had this idea for a song a few years back that. I'm not a musician. I have no musical talent whatsoever. I can hold a note on pitch or whatever, but I can't play a single instrument. That part I have no rhythm. That part never clicked with me. So I was like, so what am I going to do with a song? But I have a lot of friends that are producers, DJs, musicians, and the like. And I told one of them, my friend Sasha Robati, who I've known from festivals for years, about this song idea. And he straight up just said, well, let's make it. And I had never done anything like this before, but he said, why don't you just lay down vocals that you want to do? I will give you a beat and then we'll just play with it. And so now where we are is the first time he ever played it was at this festival called Dirty Bird Campout, which is a festival I've worked for years. I do comedy with them. It's one of my favorites, a summer camp themed electronic music festival. It's 5,000 adults acting like they're 7 years old, having the best time of their life. And he played it at this festival, and I got to hear it like over the speakers. Like, this is the first time it's ever been played live for other people, and everyone in the crowd went nuts because it grabs your attention. It's about a guy freaking out in the middle of his night out with his friends, essentially. Like that moment that we've all had when you go like, oh shit, I've done a lot of drugs. I'm supposed to go to work tomorrow, but I'm here in this situation. How do I adapt, respond to this? And like Sasha says, my voice just kind of cuts through everything. So when you hear this in like a club or like at a festival, you immediately, like, even if the beat just bzz, 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 continuously, this will break you out and make you pay attention. And now I'm super excited that the song is actually being released on Wednesday, which is April 27th, which this will probably already be out by, or not be out by quite yet.
Well, actually, I'll put this bad boy up tomorrow.
Okay, then bam, there you go. So
it'll be out the next day.
Yeah, so it'll be out the next day. We already made a music video for it that's going to be released a week later. A big DJ already remixed it. She just dropped it at Coachella, which was super cool.
That's awesome.
I got videos sent of me when I was in Puerto Vallarta, like on my honeymoon, of my voice just shouting through Coachella over the speakers. And I was like, this is cool as fuck. So it's a new avenue for me. It's something I've never thought about before, but I love the festival world so much and being a participant in these however I can, whether it's doing comedy or now making music and we're trying to figure out, like, can house music be funny? Can you take yourself out of dancing and just laugh for a little while too? And that, funny enough, circles it back to Crave, where our motto at Crave was laugh hard, dance harder. Like Purge. Allow yourself to escape whatever troubles you're in and just lose yourself in this world or in your mind for even just a moment. and feel what it's like to not be tethered to anything and just be floating through this universe. And I think in a really cerebral, grandiose way, that's what this song is meant to do, is just break you out, make you laugh, make you want to dance, but go, that was weird, that was fun. What else can these guys do? And hopefully our idea is to maybe make more of them and keep seeing where we're going. We're going to see if this one takes off or not as a success, but it's just try it. I think if anything I do say at the end of this podcast, if you have an idea and you don't know how it's going to go, you're never going to know until you actually put the pen to the paper and make something happen from it. And no one's going to tell you to do it. No one's going to do it for you. So if you believe in something, you just have to go for it, whatever that may be. And don't let anybody tell you that it's not going to work, because you're going to find that out on your own. And if it doesn't, you learn a lesson anyway. So it's all just a beautiful thing. And I'm so excited for people to see this music video. And I mean, hear the song too, but the music video that we made, it's just a 1-minute thing. It's made for TikTok and Instagram Reels. We didn't want to overload people. But I'm so fucking proud of this.
So what's it called?
I'm Having Fun.
Okay.
It's Sasha Robati featuring Alex Hooper. The song's called I'm Having Fun. And you will hear that phrase continually repeated throughout the song. Because in the end, if you're not having fun, what are you really doing?
What are you doing here?
What are you doing,
if you're not having, what are we even, I ask that question a lot. Like, what are we even doing here, man? Like, big time, small time. Like, let's have some fun. Well, this was fun.
I loved it. I could talk to you forever. We're very much of the same breed, Ryan.
I believe so. I believe so. And it's pleasure having you on. So glad to run into you Friday night. And so, we're only 1/3 or 1/4 of the way through these careers.
That's it.
So let's keep on chugging. Check out I'm Having Fun. DJ Robotic?
Sasha Robati is his name. Sasha Robati is his name. You can find it on my Instagram is all my socials at Hooper Hair Puff. You can find me on there, hoopercomedy.com for tour dates. I have a bunch of tour dates coming up this summer. So, bam, catch me on the road.
Yeah, and if you're a festival person, you've probably already seen it.
Yeah, Desert Hearts is this weekend. Lightning in a Bottle's next month. I'll be at Burning Man. Just come, give me a big hug, and call me a piece of shit if you want. I can take it.
That's the perfect way to end.